Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime. Welcome into Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. You know, in the intro there, I'm saying, do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. Portnoy, obviously been the story of the week, claims in his little snippet that he put out that he was actually rooting for Ohio State for the Big Ten, which is just like, yeah, man, I don't vibe with you on any sort of level, if that's true, though I doubt it is. But appreciate you so much for joining me. I did not get to have a live show on Monday. In fact, I haven't had a live show all week, which with the eventful week that we've had, I'm looking forward to this one tonight. So hoping you guys bring it as well. But we got a boatload to talk about here on the show. I've got my keys to a Buckeyes victory on Saturday, my prediction for the game. I want to talk about Julian Sayin as we head into his first start, because I think there's a really interesting dynamic with the Julian and Arch Manning thing going on here. And the fact that Arch is on the other side as these two both make their debuts is really interesting. Obviously, the Dave Portnoy, Arch Manning ridiculousness. I'm sorry, not Arch Manning, the Dave Portnoy ridiculousness. Like this idiot has somehow become the biggest story in the middle of the week of the biggest regular season game of the year. And it's kind of dominated the headlines of every college football show over the last day and a half. But I think it's important to note that while he is a villain, he's not the villain here. We'll obviously discuss that. And of course, we will open it up to you guys as we always do. At the end of the show, we'll get to your super chats. But if you got anything that you want to talk about, wait till I'm done with my segments, get them in the chat and we'll bring them up at the end. A few programming notes that I wanted to go through for the rest of this week. Friday morning, we'll be doing a classic Friday during the season, Juck on Bucks live at 10 a.m., which is what we did all last year, 10 a.m. on Friday. So live show over at Juck on Bucks, 10 a.m. Friday. We'll be going over final thoughts for the game. No pregame show this weekend on Saturday, but you can count on that every week over at Juck on Bucks. But this week, I'll be down in Columbus for the game. I think that's probably the only game I'll go to this year until the postseason. So you can join me before and after the game over there at Juck on Bucks for the normal postgame show, just not this week. We will have a post-game show when I get home from Columbus. That's for sure. I may even pop on here on the Buckeye Huddle post-game show. We'll see how quick I get home. But this weekend, no streaming during the Buckeyes game, as obviously I will be at the game. So that is the programming update for the rest of the week. But here we are, guys. 3 days. 3 days from Texas at Ohio State. 1 versus 2 or 3, depending on who you trust the most. I fully believe what we are about to see here, in addition to a fantastic game, are 2 excellent college quarterback eras begin at both Ohio State and Texas with Arch Manning and Julian Sayin. The interesting thing is when we talk about these 2 quarterbacks, the public's perception of these 2, despite their very clear similarities, couldn't be more different. I really hope that Julian Sayin is going to make a whole lot of new fans Saturday, and I think he will, because as strange as it sounds, being a 5-star, a kid who won the Elite 11, the number 1 or 2 quarterback coming out of his class, depending on where you looked, Julian Sayin might be the quietest, least hyped future superstar we've ever seen, for sure at Ohio State. And I don't just mean by the national media. I mean by Ohio State fans as well. And I think that's all about to change on Saturday. Julian Sayin is the anti-media Arch Manning. Like, not Arch Manning, but media Arch Manning. Everything Arch has done, like, people just hate on him. And Julian's just the opposite. But that's not the real Arch that everybody's hating on. That's the media Arch. And it's important to differentiate that, because the real Arch has pretty much handled these circumstances better than anybody I could imagine being in the situation he's in. Coming from the family he comes from the money he comes from, the spotlight. He's not a diva. He hates the spotlight. He loves his teammates. He loves his school. He's been a perfect teammate. He waited his turn. He's been perfect. And it seems really genuine. It doesn't seem contrived. But the media Arch, that's the quarterback that's not deserving of all the press, that's been shoved down the public's throats, that's got people talking about he's the front runner for the Heisman before he's ever started a game. Well, before he's ever started a real game. And Arch in this system, an extra year than Julian's been at Ohio State. He threw for 900 yards last year, most of it garbage time or against trash teams, like his 2 starts against, I think it was UTEP and Mississippi State, 2 teams with horrible defenses. And what did he show in those games? He showed, number one, some really high-level throws. He definitely showed some deep balls, some lasers, some really nice accuracy on a college football field against college defenses, albeit not very good ones. He showed some dumb picks too, and he showed some mistakes when you rush him. They got some heat on him. He threw a really bad pick, and I think we could see some of that on Saturday. But the scariest thing he showed as far as Saturday's matchup goes to me was the running. The kid's got real wheels, and he's got breakaway speed, and he busted off like a 55-yarder. He even had a little bit of taunting at the end of that run. And you probably heard him talk. Very classy kid. Doesn't seem like the type that would taunt a little at the end of a run, but he's a competitor. And I'm telling you, I like that about him. I think the dude's going to be a really, really good quarterback. How good? I don't know. But it's hard for me in general not to like this guy, not to root for this guy. I do often push back against media narratives, and I admit I can't stand the way it's been shoved down our throat. I'll let Tim Tebow. And Tim Tebow, that took place before social media was big. In this era, with as big as social media is, if Arch comes out on Saturday and has a game where he lights it up, I can't even begin to imagine the circus that's going to be around Arch Manning and Texas this year. And I'm just trying to remember that I can't hate media Arch without letting it cloud my honest evaluation, because the dude has been pretty cool. But it is going to be bigger than Tim Tebow if Arch comes out, wins in Columbus on Saturday, and has a great game. Now, a lot of people think this guy's been overrated since he came out of high school. Wouldn't have been a 5-star if his name wasn't Manning. I don't think it'll be long before those people that even dislike Arch are going to have to admit he's a hell of a football player. But there is already some Arch fatigue setting in. But the other quarterback, the other superstar quarterback that's going to be on the field on Saturday night, most of the country has no clue. They've heard his name. They might have seen a picture, but they've never seen a highlight. They got no idea what Julian Sayin has to offer other than looking at him and not being very impressed. And I think they're in for a real surprise. If Arch is the 5-star, number 1 rated quarterback in the class who gets oversaturated, Julian Sayin is the exact opposite. He's like the anti-media Arch, and it's pretty wild because you would think Julian Sayin, as a 5-star quarterback in his second year, who's about to start at Ohio State, a brand just like Texas, maybe the 2 biggest in the country, that Julian Sayin would have been consistently pumped up and consistently talked about like Arch has been. Not quite to that level. Obviously, his last name isn't Manning, but Julian Sayin has been consistently under-discussed, overlooked, even from a lot of Ohio State fans. The excitement level, it's just not been there, and it's really obvious why. It's because of the way he looks. It's because of his build. It's because of his perceived limitations and his public personality. He just doesn't sell it like that, and he's similar to Arch, I think, in that he doesn't really want to. He probably doesn't even want the pub, but he's going to get it. He's going to get it because people have been underestimating this guy, and I think he's absolutely got the goods. I always have. I've been talking to Buckeye fans for the last year and a half on my show, and the doubt about Julian Sayin has been so high that at one point during the spring last year, I started to briefly doubt myself. And am I wrong about this kid? I've been so excited for him. I was pissed off when he committed to Bama. I thought he was going to be another Bryce Young. And when he did come and transfer to Ohio State, I mean, you take one look at him if you've never seen him before. The baby face, it makes him look shorter than he is. And you just look at the guy, he doesn't look like he has a big arm. But there's a lot of Buckeye fans who were so latched on at that time when he transferred into Air Noland. And it didn't matter if they had ever seen Air Noland play football or not. The dude's nickname is Air. Ryan Day went and got him. He must be that dude. And during that season, when Kyle McCord wasn't exactly playing fantastic, There were so many people who were saying, don't worry, Air is coming, as if he was going to come in as a freshman and somehow save the day. I mean, Air is coming could have been trending on Twitter when Kyle McCord wasn't playing good. I heard people say that to no end. And Ryan Day going out and getting Air must be a 5-star, must be awesome. He's built great. Surely he must come in as a freshman and be better than Kyle McCord. And that crew was not happy when Ryan Day took Julian Sayin in. But when he took Julian Sayin in, it was a clear indication of which quarterback he wanted more. I mean, we already knew which quarterback he wanted more because he went after Julian Sayin before he went after Air Nolan. But choosing to bring him in after he already had Air committed was the only thing I needed to know what the boss thought about these two guys. You don't bring Sayin in after you told Air he's going to be the only quarterback in the class unless you're prepared to lose Air. And Ryan Day was. Now, that was a bit of a controversial decision by Ryan Day. And that decision has led to what we're about to see on Saturday. If you want to play the what if game, like what if Ryan Day had not made that decision? Who are we seeing roll out at quarterback on Saturday? Is Devin Brown still here? Did he and Lincoln just have a quarterback battle? Is it a transfer? I don't know. But it was a cutthroat decision by Ryan Day and a moment that I personally had a lot of buyback in on Ryan Day. Number one, because I was a huge fan of Julian Sayin coming out of high school. And it's a decision that I did not believe he would have made prior to that situation right there. It was shortly after the Cotton Bowl, the Missouri game. I was furious. I had just decided to start my podcast. I had ordered the equipment, an angry, aspiring podcaster. And by the time the equipment came, I was no longer angry. And a lot of it was the decision to bring Julian Sayin in. My tone was totally different because to me, it marked what I thought was a change in the way Ryan Day was going to do things. I don't want to say win at all cost because it'll always be for him culture first. And I love that about him. But there is a balancing act. And I think he made a decision to push a little harder. But when Julian got on campus last year in the spring, a lot of people still pushing for Air. They didn't understand why Julian was getting more opportunities in the spring. And then when we rolled into this year and Air left, a lot of those folks jumped on to the Lincoln train. I heard him talking about Tavian. I just wonder, can you think of another 5-star quarterback, a number one type quarterback that the Ohio State fan base has been less excited about than Julian Sayin? I'll save you the trouble. There hasn't been one. And it's obviously easy to see why. These other guys we're talking about, Air Nolan, Tavian St. Clair, Lincoln Keenholz, they're all 6'3" yoked up athletic dudes. Julian's none of that. Doesn't have a very outgoing personality. Doesn't come across as somebody who's going to be a great leader. Take command of the huddle. Julian Sayin, quite possibly the strangest underdog story ever, right? Like, keep in mind, this dude had to win over scouts before he ever had to win over the public. When he's going in and winning the Elite 11 and becoming the number one quarterback in the country out of high school, like, that is incredible. Keep in mind, these guys are making these projections and grading themselves off of the NFL draft. They take it dead serious. I mean, it is serious business, and this is their career. And despite Julian's frame, which does not look like an NFL prospect, his arm is so different, and he won them over so much with that arm that even with that build, they made him number one, which made me really curious. Who is this kid Nick Saban's going after? In a class with Dylan Raiola, he wants that kid. Well, those who were curious went and watched him. And this kid playing high-level California high school football was a wizard. A wizard. And everybody was like, holy moly, that's Bryce Young all over again. The accuracy, the arm slots, the off-platform stuff, the athleticism. He is very athletic. Ryan Day spoke about it yesterday. But I couldn't wait to see if that would translate onto the college football field. Could he pull that off against the big dogs? And that is what I am most excited for on Saturday. I've been waiting for a couple of years now. We're just 3 days out, and we get to see Julian Sayin make his debut in the biggest game that he's going to play all year until the last game of the regular season, and it's against Media Arch. He's got a good offensive line. He's got the best wide receivers in football. He's got the best tight end in football, and he's taking on what many are calling the best defense in football. And he doesn't got a lot of pressure. Arch and Texas have all the pressure. The spotlight is on Manning. The spotlight is on Sark. And it's really strange because when we look at Ohio State, they're the defending national champions. They're playing at home. They're the favorite. You would think the pressure would be on Ohio State, but the outside pressure is on Texas, who's everybody's darling right now, everybody's national championship pick. Everybody's picking them to win the game, despite them not being the favorite. It's all on them. And if Steve Sarkisian, who's been to the semifinals 2 years in a row, doesn't cash in this year, he starts to enter that, can he get over the hump? Can he win the big one territory that we see so many of these coaches go through before they finally win one? And especially if James Franklin cashes it in this year, that transfers over to Sark for sure. But I think we're going to come out of this game, not so great game or not, when it comes to Julian Sayin, saying, I see it. I see it. I think he's going to make some plays that are going to be like, okay, there it is. We can win with this guy. And it's going to put a whole lot of people's minds at ease, because I know there are a lot of people who are very on the fence about whether or not Ohio State can win a championship with this guy. I totally believe they can. I definitely do. So Ryan Day, obviously he got crushed before last year. The expectations for Ryan Day last year from the media were a little over the top. It was like, yeah, the team was in natty or bust mode, but there really was that expectation from the media that if Ryan Day didn't win a national championship, they were just going to crush him. You know, they were. It was natty or bust for Ryan Day was their angle. And if he didn't, they were going to totally crush him. I don't think there's any other program outside of Ohio State that gets that kind of expectation from the media other than Ohio State and Texas when they're up. And I do just want to, before I talk about the press conference tomorrow, is hit on this. Adam says, sick of hearing Sayin and Caleb being labeled as the Bama transfers every time they're mentioned by the national media. Now, this is an interesting conversation to me because they have now both been at Ohio State longer. Like Julian was at Ohio State longer than he was at Alabama, a month after he was at Ohio State. Caleb has obviously now been at Ohio State longer than he was ever at Alabama. And I was thinking this morning, I think it was because I watched the replay of the Indiana. Remember Caleb's Indiana punt return. So Caleb returns the punt for a touchdown. And in the middle of his call, Gus Johnson, in the middle of his call, as he's the Alabama transfer, like what? So that bothers me, right? It bothers me, and it bothered me last year. Are they going to continue that? Like, when does the statute of limitations wear off that we have to describe someone as a transfer? Because I think that when they've been at the new school longer than they were ever at the old school, we can just now call them the Buckeye, the Buckeye. Let's not call them the Alabama transfer anymore. Adam, we'll have our ears out for that this year. We'll be talking about that and cooking some people if they keep that up. But went down to Ryan Day's press conference yesterday at the Woody, and he was asked about Julian's athleticism. And not a lot of people seem to have given Julian much credit for his athleticism, but he's shown it in a few times in limited snaps at Ohio State. I think he had 11 passes last year, but he has shown it. He had one 20-yard scramble down the gut, and it looked like, man, that dude's got some wheels. He can make this happen when he needs to. But this is what Ryan Day said about his athleticism. He's got good short area quickness. He can move in the pocket. He's gotten stronger, put on weight, strength, and power. In terms of somebody similar, CJ Stroud's mobility, he's quick. So he compared Julian's mobility to CJ Stroud, which nobody thought CJ Stroud had a lot of mobility for quite a while either. Maybe not until his last game, or at least didn't know he had quite that until that Georgia game, man. That was something. But part of the fun of having an outlet for myself talking about Buckeyes football is being able to put myself on record. And boy, if Julian Sayin comes out and shows out, have I got a segment to show you from like week 3 of my show about what I said about Julian Sayin? I can't wait. I cannot wait. But yeah, man, a lot of Bryce Young comparisons. And the funny thing is, Bryce Young was his idol. Like, they lived close to each other. He was his favorite quarterback. Julian Sayin used to watch clips in middle school of Bryce Young at the Elite 11. And Julian goes on to win the Elite 11. it's just a really cool similarity. Now, Bryce has a negative connotation now because of Carolina. I don't know. Maybe he's turned that around, but it didn't start out well. And certainly one of the things that you noticed when Bryce Young got to Carolina was, oh my gosh, this dude looks so small in the NFL. I can't wait to see Julian out there and see what he looks like on this field with these two behemoth teams. But he's got a hell of an offensive line, and we're going to talk about those lines. I think Julian's going to smash it tomorrow. I'm going to say, so the over-under for passing yards for Julian Sayin tomorrow is 230 tomorrow, Saturday, 231 and a half yards. That's the over-under in passing yards. What do you got? 231 and a half yards. I got the over. I did a survey before the show. 350 votes. 68% said over. I think Julian Sayin is going to be a yards machine type of quarterback. Accuracy, yards, pick them up easy in chunks. Last year, if we look at Will Howard, in 16 games, he had 4,000 yards, 73% accuracy, 35 touchdowns, 10 picks. If we go back to 2023, Kyle McCord in 13 games, was it 13? Was it 12? 12 games, 3,170 yards, 66%, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. I think Julian's going to shred Kyle's numbers. In 2022, CJ Stroud, 14 games, 3,688, 66% accuracy, 41 touchdowns, and 6 picks. 41 is crazy. But Julian, I'm thinking, not going to be a CJ Stroud 4,400 yards because you got a better running game and you got a better schedule. But I could see it being somewhere in between the Kyle McCord season and that season. And again, we don't know how many games we're going to play. These things, I wish you can't, it's hard to find. You have to do the math yourself, but it's hard to find like just the regular season stats so we can compare even. But obviously CJ Stroud in his first big time game against a big time opponent, Oregon, comes into the shoe. I think he passed for 484 yards that game. Could we see something like that out of Julian? How fun would that be? But I'm thinking we're looking at somewhere around 3,500 yards, 35-ish touchdowns, and 5 picks. Not quite enough to get him to New York for the Heisman, which I think is perfect because it's plenty enough to get Jeremiah Smith to New York for the Heisman ceremony. And I think that Jeremiah will be in New York for the Heisman ceremony. But not going to be long before everybody said they knew all along that Julian Sayin was going to be just as good as Arch. Now, what are the keys to the Buckeyes win, aside from Julian Sayin having a solid game, which is really all he needs to do is have a solid game. Let's get into it. But before we do, I'd like to ask you to please like the show, share it with a friend, and if you could, please subscribe to the Buckeye Huddle, which is, hey, Doozy, what's up, buddy? Which is everybody's favorite channel, Buckeye Huddle. If you're not subscribed, you really should be. I don't know what you're waiting for. Here we go for Arch, Wheels and Levers. That's our Texas buddy. He says the prop bet for Arch is only 239. So roughly the same yards for Arch and Julian. Wheels and Levers also wants to let us know that he has developed immunity to the virus, and the virus he's speaking of is the SEC virus that Texas fans have been infected with, and I am very happy to hear that. We don't want anybody to, the fewer infected by that, the better. The SEC virus, of course, has rubbed off on a lot of the Texas fan base. They used to be fun to interact with, as recently as the Cotton Bowl, like they were fun to interact with. Now they've got the virus. They've gone full Tennessee mode. So it's nice to hear that you're still okay and hanging with us. But what are the keys to a Buckeye victory? So Ryan Day was asked yesterday. I actually forget what the question was, but I remember his answer. Ryan Day has this thing where he can be asked a question and give a very insightful answer. So insightful that as he's talking, I find myself nodding along. And then I realize, wait a minute, this isn't the question that was asked. He's talking about something totally different, which is a really good skill. But sometimes he drops some good nuggets. And what he started talking about was the penalties in the Cotton Bowl. You remember the penalties. They killed like 3 Ohio State drives in the first half. Now, everybody wants to talk about how evenly matched these two teams were last year. And last year, when I was watching the game. I really thought that had Ohio State not shot themselves in the foot for a couple of those drives, they would have scored another touchdown in the first half, and it might have looked a little different. But then again, had you scored another touchdown in the first half early, you might not have got the Trey touchdown late. But he started talking about those penalties and how that really has to be the focus. The game obviously going to be won on the margins, turnovers, penalties. When two teams are matched up this close, all the cliches come into they're there for a reason, right? The most physical team's going to win, one on the margins, turnovers, whoever makes the least mistakes, like all that stuff, right? We get it. It all matters, and they're cliches for a reason. They're usually true. These are two championship level football teams, and I don't think either of them are going to get caught slipping, making dumb decisions like we saw in Farmageddon, which a lot of that had to do with the weather. But I don't anticipate a super sloppy game. Might be a super conservative game. I don't think it's going to be sloppy. But let's talk about some of these matchups. So the Texas secondary against the Ohio State wide receivers, going to be an amazing matchup to watch. This is a strength on strength matchup here. Now, some people think Texas has the very best secondary in the country. Everybody thinks Ohio State has the best wide receiver crew in the country. And this right here, a strength on strength matchup, we got a couple of them. I would assume Texas is going to try to take Jeremiah away. They got the same defensive coordinator. It didn't work for them in terms of winning the ball game, but it did work in terms of they were still able to stop the run and hold Jeremiah down. Ohio State did not rush for 100 yards in the Cotton Bowl. And with all that focus on Jeremiah, you would think something else would give, and it did a little bit to Carnell Tate, who had 7 catches, and I think G. Scott had 5, Emeka had 5, but they didn't give up the huge Jeremiah play. So I'd imagine Pete Kwiatkowski, their defensive coordinator, who's one of the very best, will go about it the same way. Does a really good job also of disguising coverages, confusing quarterbacks, and with a secondary that can really play. That's a bad recipe for Julian Sayin making his first start. I think the Bucs are going to need to move Jeremiah around as much as they can and get the ball in his hands early and often to get him involved and get him going, get him hitting, get him energized. Ryan Day hit on that yesterday. He was asked about when somebody like Texas takes away, Jeremiah, are you just okay with that? Are you okay with using everybody else? And okay, you take him away, we're going to go here, or does it bother you? And Ryan Day basically said, look, we're here to win the game. It doesn't really matter who gets those touches, but when Jeremiah gets the ball, usually good things happen. So I do expect that we will see some of those manufactured touches like we saw against Oregon in the first series, like we saw against Notre Dame, to get him involved and get him getting some catches early. But I do think Texas will still go with the same game plan and try to take him out of it. Now, if Ohio State, to keep the passing game going, it's really going to rely on the running game. If Ohio State can have some success early running the ball against Texas, which they couldn't last time, and if Texas can stop Ohio State with their front 7, I think the offense is going to look really stagnant all night. And this is where we get into our other strength on strength matchup between these two. And it's when Ohio State has the ball as well. The Ohio State offensive line versus the Texas defensive line. Texas now has 3 waves of big men that they can keep bringing in fresh. 2 really great linebackers, including Ant Hill, who's one of the 10 best players in college football, all those defensive linemen, and they can just clog things up with fresh bodies, let those linebackers clean it up, and try to shut down the Ohio State running game. Buckeyes need to be able to run the ball against that front 7. And this offensive line, which I think is going to be a top offensive line in the country, has its work cut out for it. Carson Hinsman, Luke Montgomery, and Tegra Shabola. We have got to see it from Tegra. They got to have a great game. It's got to look like Penn State last year because they're going to need to run between those tackles to get this done. I don't see much success running around the edges. There's too much speed on the perimeter for Texas, way too much speed to string it out. That's not going to work. You got to take it straight at them. It's their only hope running the ball, in my opinion. And CJ Donaldson needs to be a battering ram, and I'm pumped to see it. You know, when we see these guys' heights and weights on paper, right? It's one thing. And sometimes you see it and you see a guy and you're like, yeah, that's not too impressive. CJ Donaldson, this guy, he's an enormous dude, like a really, really large dude. And we saw how much quicker he looks in the spring game now that he's got his body down to like 227 from the 243 that he is in the West Virginia film. I think that we're going to see something out of him. I think we're going to see something out of him, try to soften him up a little bit, get James Peoples to pop a few. If the Buckeyes can get this running game going like they couldn't in the Cotton Bowl, it's then going to open up the field downfield a little bit for Julian Sayin. And that'll be huge for the Buckeyes. I think the tight ends will be huge for the Buckeyes. I think we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of Max Clare and Will Kazmarek. Max Clare should have a really nice debut. And you got a quarterback, needs a security blanket. You got a tight end as skilled as him that's going to smoke linebackers against anybody in the country. And on the other side of the ball, Texas has really good wide receivers too. Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore. Wingo should have been better last year. I think he's really going to show it this year. Texas also with a couple of really good backs. CJ Baxter coming off his injury where I think he tore his LCL and PCL. So two of his stabilizing ligaments, and he's made a recovery that's, you know, ahead of schedule, ahead of time. And he's really impressed Sark with his recovery. We weren't expecting to see a ton of him up until 2 weeks ago at practice or last week in their final scrimmage. And Sark was like, look, he's not on the pitch count. We're going to get more aggressive. You got him. You got Wisner, who Wisner has shown that he can handle the load by himself. And they got themselves a top 5 tight end as well. Nothing more annoying, though, to me than a quarterback who can pick up first downs consistently running the ball. And that, to me, is the biggest fear here. If there's a mismatch in this game, though, on this side of the ball, I think it's the Ohio State defensive line against the Texas offensive line. And hard to say that definitively, but I think of all these groups we're talking about on the field in this game, the Texas offensive line is the least proven unit of any of them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't get it done. They could, but they're the biggest unknown. I think we know just about everybody except for that unit. We certainly know the Ohio State defensive line. You got 2 vets in Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson. You got K-Mac, who's now a vet. We know what Eddie Houston can do. And that starting 4, in addition, Bo Atkinson, what can CJ Hicks do? Like, I really like the Ohio State starting defensive line against this crew. In addition to that, hopefully, we're going to do our job, which Ryan Day, talked about at the press conference as well. You got to get them on a silent count. The crowd's got to bring it. Remember, we own Big Noon. It's ours. It's a badge of honor. And if we're looking to match up on, like, we look around this field, everything's even. The coaches are even. Like, I think Sark and his crew, that's top 3 coaching staff in the country. Ohio State, to me, that's the best coaching staff in the country. But all the position groups, like, even when you say this team's got an edge in this group, it's like, it's so slim. Ironically, the spot that we've been talking about all year, right, as maybe the weak spot for Ohio State, it's been the defensive line, but it's not been the starters. We know the starters are going to eat. It's after the starters. So I suspect that Texas is going to have a difficult time running the ball. They're going to have some chunks. They're going to have some pops here and there. But if they can contain Arch, I think they're going to do a decent job keeping them under 100 yards, hopefully. It's the interior guys that I worry about when they take out K-Mac and they take out Edric Houston, who have never played a ton of snaps in a game. They never have, neither of them. Larry's talked about playing them 25 to 35 snaps a game. That's only half a game. Ryan Day talked about these guys yesterday, about the guys on the interior. Ironically, Bucks will be playing against Texas with Hero Canoe, who could have assisted this year, certainly, as well as Murad Watson, who was the transfer from Syracuse that hit the portal, and Texas ended up getting him as well. Who's going to be playing for Ohio State when you take out K-Mac, when you take out Eddie Houston. My estimation at the beginning of spring was at one tech, we would enter the season with Caden McDonald as the starter, Will Smith Jr. as the 2, Eric Mensah as the 3, Max Roy, the freshman, as the 4. That's exactly what it's going to be at 3 tech. Eddie Houston as the 1, then a split. Not a clear 2, but a split between Ty Malone and Jarquez Carter with Jason Moore as the clear 4. Took a lot of heat for that, for saying Jarquez Carter was going to pass Jason Moore. Jarquez Carter, he may not have passed Jason Moore, as Jason Moore might be a little dinged up this week. So we don't definitively know that, but I believe he has. I believe he has. And the dude's an absolute dog. He's going to eat. He's going to eat a ton of snaps, and that's a good thing. Regarding Will Smith, he is up to 295, and we have now heard Ryan Day, Sonny Styles, and Josh Padilla all bring him up unprompted this offseason. Josh Padilla said, really difficult to block him after blocking K-Mac. You block K-Mac, then you get with Will. Will's slippery. He's different. Now, I wasn't a real big believer in Will Smith Jr. handling this assignment when this was first getting talked about. He was 280 pounds in the spring, barely, had just gotten there. Moves from 3 tech to 1 tech because he wasn't cutting it at 3 tech. It definitely was never the plan for him to be your 1 tech. And I sure hope I turn out to be wrong, because now he's up to 295. Everybody's talking about him. There's part of me that's still scared that maybe they're trying to pump him up through the media. Like, we need you, bro. Get his confidence up. Those things happen from time to time. Hell, they did it with Jason Moore last year. But we're going to get to see on Saturday if Will Smith is, in fact, the real deal like that, because he's getting thrown right into the fire. Biggest fear I have in this game, despite aside from stupid turnovers, is Arch running. And is Caleb Downs the X factor here? Is Caleb Downs the X factor to make sure that Arch doesn't get off running? We better not see a bunch of penalties. We better not see any penalties from IGB. I think we're going to see Malik Hartford blow somebody up. I think Arvell Reese is going to have his hello world moment where everybody in the country says, who is that guy on Ohio State? And I think the rest of the country is going to get introduced to Kenyatta Jackson as well. Could just end up a household name by the end of the night. It's going to be in the day. I think that Jermaine Matthews is going to do a heck of a job on Ryan Wingo, most likely. And my final score prediction for the game, 27 Bucks, 20 Texas, in a all-time game that we're going to be talking about 20 years from now, just like we still talk about the 2005 game. But this time, the Buckeyes win at home. Trill Texan says, Alan Clark is the best young edge coach in college. You won't get much argument here. If you're a college football fan, like I'm sure you are watching this program, YouTube TV, you may or may not have found out, is the best product on the market for college football. They got the sweet quad box. It's awesome. Best one on the market. And it looked like we were going to have a big problem. So obviously we got games starting Thursday. We've got Baylor and Auburn are going to be on Fox on Friday. And it came out on Monday, as so happens right before a season starts, that one of these networks or carriers is having a carriage dispute with the provider. And that happened as YouTube, owned by Google, was apparently their contract was up with Fox. And YouTube was trying to tell Fox, look, we're going to renegotiate, but we want your price to go down. And Fox said no. So here we go with the big dispute. They were about to pull service if they didn't come to an agreement by Wednesday night. And they struck a deal that is not complete, but it has extended that date or the service. So we're not going to miss any games this weekend. If that had happened, we would have had to, I don't know, anybody who has YouTube TV would have had to subscribe to the Fox app, watch the Fox games on the Fox app, click back to watch YouTube TV, to watch the ESPN and the CBS and the ABC. Do you remember when cutting the cord was all the rage and we were all going to save a lot of money and screw cable? I probably got like 10 of these. I got 3 sons too, but I probably got like 10 of these different services, right? There's no chance I'm not paying triple than what we paid for DirecTV back in the day. And you can't even find everything in one place. Like this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. This could not have gone any worse. It really couldn't have. So, not only is Fox going to try to screw us here with YouTube TV, but if you're a Buckeye fan, and most of you are, although there's some horns in here. Welcome to the horns. I hope you're being nice in the chat. I'll be there in a few. This whole Portnoy situation, man, they've essentially ruined an entire week of coverage by making this Dave Portnoy story like the thing this week. And the fact that these guys at Fox hired this guy thinking that somehow he was going to be some kind of Pat McAfee. Ironically, Pat McAfee had some beef with Ryan Day this week, if you hadn't heard that, which is just insane. I'll explain. But Portnoy first. So Portnoy, like, nobody likes this guy. Even Barstool fans have never really liked Dave. In addition to that, when it comes to football, he's like a typical Michigan fan that he doesn't really follow college football. For instance, he knows nothing about the Texas football team. He follows Michigan, and that's it. He doesn't, that's how they all are. They don't know the sport. And I don't know how you're going to put him on a pregame show to talk about all of college football when he doesn't know it. But obviously, I'm very biased in my take about him. I can't stand him. I think he's horrible. Maybe other people think he's great. But from a business perspective, it doesn't seem like it's going to work. They're free to make whatever decision they want, but there are also consequences to our decisions. And what they did came across as very disrespectful. It came across as very disrespectful. Now, I did a members only video on this yesterday. I want to play a snippet of that video so I don't have to repeat the whole damn thing again. But here's what I had to say about it. So this game, and I love it. Unfortunately, we're not talking about that in this segment because we're going to talk about trash media stuff in this segment. Look, this entire Portnoy story is just crazy to me. And like when this thing first broke that Ohio State had potentially banned him or asked him not to be involved in the Fox Big Noon in stadium broadcast, my initial reaction, probably like most of yours, was good. But it had nothing to do with Portnoy. It was about Fox, because Fox, who we just found out this week that Fox, who has Gus Johnson call almost every one of our games, Gus Johnson, not only a Michigan fan, he goes on a podcast and talks about how great it's been for him personally to be involved in the Michigan Renaissance. Like, I'm talking a deep fan. Now, props to him. He does do a pretty good job disguising that, but being that he's a guy from Detroit, I always assumed, but the fact that he never gave me concrete proof to say, all right, there it is, means he does his job pretty well. But hearing that the same week that all this crap came out, it's just another slap in the face by Fox. Fox, Ohio State carries that product. It carries Big Noon. They saddle with Ohio State with, look, not only their broadcasting, which is subpar to ESPN's, but the fact that we have to constantly be in that noontime slot, and we're going into this Texas game played at noon, and it's just like so fitting that, okay, for once, Ohio State can stick it back to them, because when they went out and hired Portnoy, it just felt like the ultimate slap in the face. Like the self-proclaimed biggest Ohio State troll that there is in these United States is Dave Portnoy. And they went out and partnered with this guy. It just felt like a slap in the face. So if this was going to screw up their production by Ohio State saying that guy's out, my initial reaction was absolutely good. Didn't even really put a whole lot of thought into the Portnoy angle. Like, why would he care? He's going to love it. He's going to eat it up. But if it screws Fox, I'm okay with him eating it up. And of course, he did eat it up. He comes out and says his
How could anybody see that crying Ryan Day and Ohio State would be this soft?
piece, but not before it leaks that Ross Bjork has a statement. And Ross Bjork has a statement. Ross denies banning Portnoy, and he says it was a Fox decision, which, of course, in the meantime, everybody had been calling Ohio State soft. That's always going to come. Somehow Ryan Day was getting brought into this, and there's no chance Ryan Day had anything to do with this. But that segment or that statement comes out from Ross Bjork, and then everybody's saying back to all the people who were calling Ohio State soft, see, it was Fox. It was Fox. Then Portnoy makes his statement. Now, Portnoy's statement is important because he says not only was he banned a week and a half ago, he's known about it, but Ohio State wouldn't let Barstool come and do their pregame show. Now, everybody can say, well, he's just lying or he's just making that up. But if we look like they do a traveling pregame show, it would make sense. Of course, they want to come to the Ohio State-Texas game. Are they going to be there? They're not going to be there. And it seems pretty clear Ohio State did not want him around. Now, most Buckeye fans, good. Listen, there's a lot of me that wants Ohio State to push back. Ohio State's been the target of a lot of these media idiots, dating back to Mark May, just like for no reason, they'll choose it. Well, yeah, for a reason to piss us off and generate interest, right? That's the reason. And it's just, he's the new flavor of the day. And that's who he is. That's what he lives to do. And the fact that Fox hired them is disrespectful. Hired him is disrespectful as hell because half of their games are at Ohio State, and Ohio State carries that entire deal for the Big Ten, right? So we're stuck at noon, stuck with Gus Johnson, the Michigan fan calling the games, and now apparently stuck with this idiot joining them. So for Ohio State to tell him, no, we don't want him in the stadium, and apparently now the rest of the Big Ten has said the same thing. That's what you got to deal with, Fox. So sorry you made that decision. Now, as far as the other folks in the media saying Ohio State is looking soft or looking like Michigan's in their head, this has nothing to do with the football program. This is boosters, admins, people up here that got nothing to do with Ryan Day or Ohio State's losing streak to Michigan or any of the players. That's not anything about this. It's not the story here. This story is people up here that make decisions saying, nah, screw that guy running around with Larry Ellison, paying kids to come to Michigan, coming in our stadium, doing your show. No, disrespect, not going to have it. So, hey, they may have a problem with it outside of Ohio. I don't give a damn. I'm all for it. Anyway, the bigger point is Fox is the demon here, not so much Dave. The other point is Ohio State didn't want this story leaked. Dave Portnoy didn't want this story leaked. It happened a week and a half. He didn't say anything about it. Fox certainly didn't want this story leaked. So those are the three parties involved, and none of them wanted the story leaked. Where did it come from? Trill Texan. Now, I wanted to highlight this. Texas fans in the chat. Michael Taft, my favorite player on the team. That's my one nice thing I'll say today about Texas. I think that kid's awesome. Ever since I saw him at the end of that Cotton Bowl with just that guttural yell of pain that you could tell was like, man, I gave it my all. We lost. Devastation. When you see someone that cares that much about college football in this era, and somehow people were trolling him for that, like that's everything we love about the game. If you're going to troll somebody because they care that much, I don't know what you're watching this sport for, but that's my favorite player, maybe that doesn't play on Ohio State this year. So that's the question. Who's your favorite Buckeye? Trill Texan says Hero Canoe is balling out in fall camp, and he made the leadership committee. I'm proud to hear that. Hero is my son's friend, and I think Hero's a great kid. Everybody loved Hero in the Ohio State locker room. Coaches, everybody. Why did Hero transfer out? Seems like he would have played this season. He would have played this season, but these things. Look, Hero was on some kind of visa, right? Hero couldn't make any money based on the regular rules. Now, Ohio State follows the regular rules. Maybe not everybody does. That's all I'm saying. Yes, Ethan. Pat McAfee does know ball. Portnoy only knows. Portnoy's only there to be an instigator. That's what he is. Now, but the funny thing is with Pat McAfee, yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, Kirk Herbstreit was hosting the show. Pat was there, and Hawk was in the piping him in with the box on the stream, and Ryan Day got brought up, and Pat McAfee was like trashing Ryan Day, saying, "Yeah, I can't stand him. If I see him here, I'm going to go the other way." And apparently, he had reached out when Ryan Day was doing his media circuit after the national championship, and literally went on everything. And they had reached out at the McAfee show multiple times to try to get him on the show, never got a response. So today on the show, he comes on and says that they had a conversation and it was a misunderstanding. Ryan Day says he never got the messages. All is clear now. But it just is interesting that in the same week with this Portnoy situation, you had the guy that Fox brought Portnoy on to kind of compete with or be that guy for them, fighting with the coach. It's crazy. Ohio State in the middle of everything this week. Wheels and Lever says, we love Taft because he hosted Arch on Arch's visit. Who wouldn't love that kid, man? I mean, he's just awesome. Been dreaming of being a Longhorn since he was 5 years old. That's great. Ryan says, I didn't think Fox did their research to realize Portnoy was such a douche before they hired him. They just looked at the surface to see he was a loud media personality. You could be right, because if you look back in his history, he has said some stuff that like moms would never forgive him for, Mika, we got a reprieve regarding YouTube TV and Fox. So we got a reprieve for now. We will see what happens. But for now, we get to watch football on Fox, on YouTube TV this weekend. Richie says, fun fact, my childhood friend brought canoe to Ohio State from Germany. My guy, Brandon Collier. Brandon Collier's your buddy, huh? I've read an article about Brandon Collier and what he does. So correct me if I'm wrong, Richie, but he's the guy that brings all those German kids over to play football, right? Wheels says, I don't get the anti-Day stuff. You see it in some media. He seems like a good guy to me. He's a very nice guy. And I think that's just a lot of it. There's not a lot of just normal dudes, like with normal dudes with young families that are in a position like him as a coach of a blue blood. He's kind of unique, and you really can't knock him for a whole lot. Almost like it's too good to be true. You know what I mean? But people find a way, like he dyes his beard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like how far you got to go down the line to come up with he dyes his beard as a knock on somebody, which he doesn't, for the record. Emily, Juck, will you do a show or talk about this new recruiting assistant? I'll mention it on the next Skull session. That's not like some big dynamic hire. Here we go. So PPI recruits. So that guy's from Cleveland that brings over all the Germans. So this dude is like legendary now. He's brought over quite a few. Matter of fact, the most recent one, what the hell is his name, Richie? The one, Villani, Sanu, forget his name. He came into camp He is something. I think he's going to Georgia, but I really wanted him. Freak athlete. Freak athlete. All right, my friends. So tomorrow. Uh-oh. Billy, what's up? What do you mean? The 247 composite rankings. What happened? Here we got a Oregon Billy here. Let me check what he's talking about. Did Oregon just jump up in the rankings or something? Is that what you're trying to say here? Let me pull it up and see. Oregon currently has so we've got Georgia number 1, USC number 2, Notre Dame number 3, Texas A&M number 4, Bama number 5, Texas 6, Oregon 7, LSU 8, Ohio State 9, Michigan 10. That is what it was the last time I saw. It's just the rankings of the talent on the. Oh, you're talking about. You're talking about the individual player ranking. Yes. Yeah. Oregon is. That's misleading, Billy. That's misleading. So here's the thing. Oregon's got 17 dudes in their class. Most programs have 21 to 31 if you're looking at Georgia. So if you extrapolate Oregon just hasn't loaded up on those kind of prospects, right? Those kind of program guys. You know what I mean? Which brings down that ranking. If you fill out the class, you're not going to continue to fill out the class with guys rated that high. So naturally, the average goes down the more numbers you get because there's only so many of those guys you can pack in one class. But I know you Oregon fans love that. Oh, you guys are talking crap to each other. Oh, all right, guys. We've officially what we've got here is the Oregon fan and the Texas fan are talking crap to each other about whose class is better. And we're sitting here on the outside looking in. I never thought there'd be a day like this. I can't believe it. I can't believe this. Oh, man. Ryan, massive recruiting list in 2027 for targets this weekend. Listen, it's huge. I love it. We've got, for starters, I want to pull this picture up and show this to you guys. This is just sick, man. And for our Texas friends, and such, this is next year's wide receiver list, right? Number 1, Jameer Brown from Ohio, right? You've got Monchon Sales. You've got Dakota Grant. They will all be in town. And those are 3 Midwesterners. But what you have here are 5 of the top 9 wide receivers in the country from the Big Ten footprint: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. Now, not often we can brag about something like that, but that's a lot of talent up here in that cycle. That's a lot of talent. 5 of the top 9 wide receivers, including number 1, Jameer Brown. I will be going to see him on Friday night. I will get some sweet footage for you guys. Hopefully he breaks off a couple of big ones for us. He'll be at the Texas game on Saturday, along with Dakota Grant, along with Monchon Sales. There is a slew of offensive linemen. Kenan Spell and David Gabriel Georges, the number 1 and number 2 running back in the country, will be at the game. There's only one position that's somewhat lacking, and it is defensive tackle. There's multiples of every position, very highly ranked kids. You've even got 2 of the top ranked edges coming in, but defensive tackle, it's crickets, man. It's crickets for the big men. Concerning. Yeah, Nick, that got off the track. It was good television, though. It was good television. All right, guys, we are at 59:34. I appreciate you all so much for joining me on Wednesday's show. Now, next Monday, Texas fans, be sure to come back. Listen, I'm going to be here. You better be here on Monday. That's the deal. We were all respectful. Appreciate you being respectful to the Buckeye fans. You better come back Monday. That's the deal. Now, appreciate you guys so much. Tomorrow we'll have a regular show on Juck on Bucks. Won't be live. Wednesday at 10 a.m. Friday at 10 a.m. Traditional Friday during the season live show at 10 a.m. over at Juck on Bucks. So I will see you guys then. I appreciate you so much. Have a great night. Go Bucks. Hey, it's Juck. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
Start